In order to alleviate global warming, 128 countries around the world have set the ultimate goal of net zero emissions by 2050, and each set the carbon reduction phase of tasks to be achieved in 2030. In addition, in the 1997 Kyoto Protocol, the so-called carbon trading was also proposed. In simple terms, it is to treat the total amount of carbon emissions as a right. Through the market mechanism, those who overuse must follow, those who have not reached the user unit can buy it. Conversely, those who have not reached the user unit can also sell the quota. Generally speaking, to maintain their brand value or image, large companies will most likely require related suppliers, cooperating factories, or affiliated companies to reduce carbon emissions and avoid being labeled as accomplices of global warming by the general public. The most obvious example is Apple. In July 2021, it was announced that all supply chain manufacturers will achieve carbon neutrality by 2030, which means that suppliers are required to reduce their own carbon or other greenhouse gases through carbon reduction or carbon compensation as the ways to achieve neutralization. Specific methods include energy saving, switch to low-carbon energy, or afforestation, etc. If it fails to meet the standards, it may be squeezed out of iPhone's supply chain. In addition to Apple, for the European Union, which is relatively leading and strict in carbon emission requirements, in 2021, each car factory is required to meet the standard of only 95 grams of carbon emissions per vehicle per kilometer. A fine of €95 per vehicle was imposed. It is not easy to imagine the carbon emissions. It can be converted into at least 20.4 kilometers per liter of gasoline. Such fuel consumption performance is a very difficult standard for most vehicles. Faced with such difficulties, various car manufacturers have cooperated to calculate the average carbon emissions. That is to say, as long as high-carbon car manufacturers find low-carbon car manufacturers to cooperate, they can lower the average carbon emissions of each car. The opening of the cooperation mechanism between automakers will speed up the pace of carbon trading. For example, Tesla, the leader in electric vehicles, has relied on its environmental awareness to rise in recent years. In addition to profiting from selling its own cars, it also makes extra income from Fiat Chrysler, about €600 million through the annual sales of carbon emission allowances. In July 2021, China's carbon emissions trading opened on the Shanghai Environment and Energy Exchange. This time, the electric power industry is selected as the first industry to be included in the transaction in China's carbon market, and subsequent high-carbon emission industries such as petrochemicals, chemicals, building materials, steel, non-ferrous metals, paper making, and aviation will also be included in the transaction. The carbon exchange mainly has two trading categories. One is the carbon emission rights allocated by the Chinese government, and the other is Chinese certified emission reduction. The goal of the carbon exchange is to influence the cost of enterprises through market-based carbon prices. The higher the carbon price, the lower the carbon emissions. Simply put, when the carbon price increases, it will increase the cost of the company. When the company's profit decreases or even loses money, it will take the initiative to reduce production, thereby reducing the amount of carbon emissions. In addition, it will also promote enterprises to upgrade equipment and reduce unit energy consumption. In order to promote the energy transition, the European Commission announced a comprehensive climate change draft called Fit for 55. which includes the expansion of the carbon trading plant, the abolition of gasoline and diesel vehicles, the levy of aviation kerosene tax, the introduction of environmental taxes, etc. The European Commission stated that one-third of the environmental budget, approximately €500 billion, will be used to support green investment. And a price must be set for carbon before people will choose clean technologies and sustainable products. According to data from the European Environment Agency, since 1990, even if the carbon emissions generated by electricity have been halved and the overall carbon emissions have been reduced by about a quarter, the greenhouse gases generated by transportation have also increased by about a third. The European Union's carbon reduction plan means that the cost of carbon emissions in transportation, manufacturing, and construction is bound to increase. Industries such as air transportation and shipping will also face high carbon emissions taxes. Companies may not be able to easily circumvent the European Union's carbon emissions regulations. As Chinese and Western countries attach importance to environmental protection, energy issues such as carbon rights are gradually being seen by investors. Taking the European Union as a precedent, in the early days of the introduction of carbon trading, carbon prices did not fluctuate much. However, with the improvement of regulations, the highest carbon price in the EU market exceeded $59 ton. In contrast, the historical highest carbon price in China during the pilot period was $19 and 33 cents ton in Shenzhen. In the future, as the number of industries included in China's carbon trading increases and laws and regulations become more complete, there's still a lot of room for carbon prices, which also means that investors have more profit opportunities.